The sun barely peeked over the horizon, casting a pale light through the kitchen window. The air was thick with the weight of silence. Emery Tisdale sat at the breakfast table, her fingers wrapped around her coffee mug, but the warmth from the cup didn't reach her. Across from her, Dante, her husband of 12 years, stared at his phone, tapping the screen absent-mindedly. The absence of conversation between them was as deafening as the ticking of the clock on the wall. He hadn't looked at her once since they sat down. The distance between them felt palpable, almost suffocating. Emery swallowed the knot in her throat, trying to suppress the sting of betrayal. She could feel it like a weight pressing down on her chest. Their marriage had been fractured for months, maybe longer. She had tried to convince herself that it was just a phase, that things would get better. But now, as she sat there watching her husband ignore her like a stranger, she knew the truth. The distance between them was no longer something temporary, it was the end. The conversation that had been looming in her mind finally broke through the silence. Dante cleared his throat, setting his phone down with a deliberate slowness. He looked at her for the first time that morning, but his eyes were cold, calculating. "I want it all, Emery," he said, his voice flat. "I'm filing for divorce. I'll take everything. And Maya." Her heart dropped. The words hit her like a punch to the stomach. Divorce? It felt unreal, like something happening to someone else. But no, it was happening to her. The man she had once loved, the father of her daughter, was tearing their life apart in front of her. His words echoed in her mind as he went on, listing his demands without a trace of emotion. "I'll take full custody of Maya. She belongs with me." He didn't wait for her to respond, as if he knew she had nothing to say. His voice was cold, like a final judgment she had no choice but to accept. Emery's face remained composed, but inside her world shattered. She had never imagined it would come to this. Dante, the man she had built a life with, had decided that their years together meant nothing. The moment he left the room, Emery's mind raced. She tried to hold on to the pieces of herself that hadn't been destroyed. She could feel the weight of his betrayal pressing down on her, but she wouldn't let him see her break. She couldn't. Not yet. Later that afternoon, Emery stood in the kitchen, her back pressed against the cool counter. She'd overheard something that tore through the carefully constructed facade she had been living behind. Dante's voice floated down the hallway, muffled at first, then clearer as he spoke into his phone. "Olivia." Her heart skipped a beat. The name felt like a dagger in her chest, even though she hadn't heard it for the first time. Olivia Reyes, the woman Dante had been seeing behind her back. Emery knew about Olivia, of course. She was the family's psychological consultant, always around, always so kind, so helpful. But Emery never imagined. Never in her worst nightmares did she imagine this. "Yeah, I've set everything up." Dante's voice came through the walls. "The bank accounts are ready. Once we file, I'll make sure she's out of the picture. Maya will be mine. You don't have to worry about anything." Emery froze, the blood draining from her face. Olivia had been in on it the whole time. The woman who had pretended to be her friend was just another piece of Dante's betrayal. And now, the foundation of everything she had believed in, the trust, the marriage, the family, was gone. She heard Dante's footsteps approach, and quickly, she wiped her eyes, masking the storm inside her. But as she did, her thoughts turned cold. This wasn't just a matter of divorce anymore. This was a battle for her life, her dignity, and her daughter. How could she have been so blind? How could she have ignored the little signs, the moments that now screamed betrayal? She had seen the texts, the late-night phone calls, the glances between Dante and Olivia that lingered just a little too long. But she had turned a blind eye, telling herself that it was nothing. And now here she was, standing in the wreckage of her own life. The realization was a gut punch, but it also sparked something inside her. Something she hadn't known was there. Something sharp, something dangerous. She wouldn't let this be her end. She had worked too hard to let him take everything from her. She would fight. Not just for her, but for Maya. The tension in Emery's body grew as the days passed. She began to gather evidence, piecing together the puzzle of Dante's deception. The bank statements, the phone records, the messages between him and Olivia, they were all there, lying in wait for her to uncover them. It was clear now that he had been planning this for months, maybe longer. Every move he made was calculated. Every decision was about control. But Emery had a plan of her own. She reached out to Tara Kent, her old friend and lawyer. Tara had always been there for her, and this time she was going to need her more than ever. They spoke briefly on the phone. Tara's voice full of hesitation at first, but eventually she agreed to help. "I won't let him get away with this, Tara," Emery said, her voice steady but filled with a determination that surprised even her. "He won't take everything from me. I'll fight with everything I have." As she hung up the phone, Emery's resolve solidified. This wasn't just about a divorce anymore. This was a war, and she was going to win. The courtroom awaited. The moment of truth was coming. Emery could feel the weight of everything she had been holding inside her for weeks, months, ready to explode. The evidence she had gathered would be her weapon, but would it be enough? Would it be enough to bring Dante to his knees, or would he crush her under his power? She didn't know, but she wouldn't back down. She stood in front of the mirror, her reflection staring back at her, and asked herself the question that had been gnawing at her. How far are you willing to go to protect your family? To protect yourself? Her hands trembled slightly, but the fire in her chest burned brighter than the fear. "How far would you go?" she whispered to herself, knowing the answer already. Emery stood at the threshold of the courtroom, her palms sweating as she gripped the handle of her briefcase. The air inside the courthouse felt thick, the hum of hushed conversations echoing around her, as if the weight of every word spoken here mattered. The walls seemed to close in, and with each step, her heart pounded harder. This was it, the battle for her future, for Maya's future, and for the life she thought she had built was about to begin. Her lawyer, Tara Kent, was already waiting inside. Tara had always been her rock, a fierce, intelligent ally who never let anything slip by unnoticed. The moment Emery entered, Tara gave her a nod, her expression serious, yet warm with reassurance. But the worry lines etched across her face betrayed her thoughts. Tara knew this fight would be far from easy. Dante had money, power, and connections, but Emery had something more valuable, the truth. Tara leaned in, her voice low as she briefed Emery one last time. "We'll hit them hard, Emery. We've got the evidence, and we've got the law on our side. But don't let them get to you. They'll try. Stay focused." Emery nodded, her resolve solidifying. She could do this. She had no choice but to do this. The courtroom doors creaked open, and Emery stepped inside, her eyes immediately locking with Dante's. He sat across from her, a cold smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. He looked every bit the polished businessman, the man everyone admired. Except to her, he was nothing but a liar, a traitor. Dante's lawyer stood and immediately began their case with sharp precision. The lawyer, a calculating figure in a dark suit, wasted no time in launching the offensive. "Your Honor, we request full custody of Maya. We have reason to believe that the defendant, Mrs. Tisdale, is emotionally unstable and unfit to care for their daughter." Emery felt a cold wave of shock hit her. How could he twist this? How could he manipulate something so sacred into something so cruel? The words felt like daggers. Tara's hand gently squeezed her arm, a silent reminder to stay grounded. Emery fought to keep her face neutral, but inside, she was burning with fury. How did I get here, she wondered. How had the man she once trusted, the father of her child, turned everything they had into this nightmare? It felt as if Dante was rewriting the entire history of their marriage, turning her into the villain, making her the problem. As Dante's lawyer continued, something unexpected happened. With a calculated flourish, he presented a damning piece of evidence, A printed email, supposedly from Emery, admitting to financial irresponsibility. The room went silent. Emery's stomach turned, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to close in. She struggled to keep her composure, but inside her mind raced. That email, she hadn't written it. It was a lie, another of Dante's manipulations. Emery fought to remain calm, but the seed of doubt was already planted. What if this was all part of his plan? What if he had been setting her up all along? As the trial progressed, Emery's heart sank further. The next blow came when Dr. Olivia Reyes, the woman who had once been a trusted family ally, took the stand. Olivia, the woman who had pretended to be her friend for years, now turned against her, painting her as emotionally unstable and unfit to care for Maya. Emery's chest tightened as she listened to Olivia's words. The betrayal felt like a slap to the face, sharp and unforgiving. She watched Olivia, who had always been the voice of calm and reason in their lives, now weaving a story that was nothing but a twisted version of reality. How could Olivia do this? How could she sell out the very woman who had confided in her, who had trusted her with everything? You're lying for him, aren't you? Emery thought bitterly, her heart sinking deeper. For Dante. But it was more than just betrayal. It was the realization that the woman she had trusted most had become part of the plan to destroy her. Memories flooded her mind, flashes of moments when she had leaned on Olivia for advice, when she had sought comfort in her words. Olivia had been there during the darkest times, listening as Emery poured out her heart. And now, she was the one tearing it all apart. "You promised me you'd stand by me," Emery whispered, barely audible. The words hung in the air like an echo, but she couldn't afford to break down. Not now. Tara caught her gaze, her eyes filled with concern. "We need to turn this around. Fast. Don't let them get inside your head," she said, her voice steady but urgent. Tara had always known how to cut through the noise, and right now, her calm presence was the only thing keeping Emery grounded. Emery steeled herself as the day dragged on, her mind reeling from the shock of Olivia's testimony. But as the trial reached a critical point, something unexpected happened. Emery wasn't done yet. She had a plan. She had a strategy, and she wasn't going to let this go without a fight. With a calm that surprised even her, she stood and began to present her evidence. She had it all. Text messages between Dante and Olivia, where they had discussed their plans to sabotage her case. Emery's hands didn't shake as she laid the evidence before the court. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for Maya, for her daughter's future, and for the truth. As she spoke, a hushed gasp swept through the courtroom. Dante's smug expression faltered for the first time. The lies he had so carefully constructed were now unraveling before his eyes. "This is the truth," Emery said, her voice low but unwavering. "You wanted to tear me down, but now you'll face the consequences." Dante's face turned pale, and for the first time since the trial began, he looked unsure. Olivia shifted uncomfortably in her seat, but it was too late. The damage was done. Tara, her face a mask of determination, looked at Emery with renewed confidence. "We've got them, Emery. This is the beginning of the end for him." But Dante wasn't finished. He stood, fury in his eyes. "This isn't over, Emery," he snarled, his voice dripping with venom. "I won't lose to you." As the courtroom buzzed with tension, Emery turned to face the audience in her mind. The fight wasn't just about her anymore. It was for anyone who had ever been betrayed, who had ever felt the sting of lies and manipulation. How would you feel if the people you trusted most turned their backs on you, just when you needed them most? She asked herself, the words resonating deeply. "I thought I knew him. I thought we were a team. But I was wrong." She let out a shaky breath, her hands trembling. The battle wasn't over. It had just begun, and she was ready to fight with everything she had. Has anyone ever tried to make you doubt your own truth? How did you fight back? She reflected, her thoughts swirling as she prepared for the final round. Emery whispered to herself, a small smile tugging at her lips. The truth hurts, but it's what will set me free. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the trial neared its final days. Emery could feel every eye on her, waiting for her next move. But she was determined to hold her ground. She had come this far, and she wasn't about to let Dante or Olivia tear apart the family she had fought so hard to protect. Every nerve in her body was stretched thin, but she kept her posture straight, her gaze sharp. Her daughter's future was in her hands now, and she wouldn't back down. The courtroom was silent as Dante's lawyer stood to present the next piece of evidence. Emery's heart skipped a beat when he held up a letter and began reading it aloud. The letter, allegedly written by Emery, contained an emotional confession of guilt, admitting to financial irresponsibility and expressing regret over her actions. The words stung like a slap to the face. For a moment, Emery's world tilted. This wasn't just a letter, it was a weapon. A calculated attempt to paint her as unstable and unfit. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath as Dante's lawyer expertly wove the story of her guilt, twisting every word into a damning indictment. Emery's stomach turned. She knew she hadn't written that letter. It wasn't hers. But how could she prove that now? Dante sat across from her, his smirk barely contained as he watched the destruction unfold. She could almost hear him whispering in her ear, his voice mocking her. This is it, Emery. This is how it ends. The judge, his face unreadable, asked for a moment to review the evidence, and the courtroom fell into a heavy silence. Emery's pulse raced. The seed of doubt had been planted, and there was no telling how deep it would grow. Her eyes flicked to Tara, but even her lawyer's usually confident expression had faltered. Cliffhanger. This isn't over, Emery, Dante whispered, his voice carrying just enough for her to hear. He wasn't finished yet. No matter what, he wasn't backing down. And that knowledge made Emery's blood run cold. As the trial continued, it became clear that Dante and Olivia were not done. They were relentless, playing every card they could, manipulating every situation to their advantage. But Emery was getting stronger with every passing moment. She had to, for Maya. It was during one of the breaks, as the lawyers shuffled papers and murmured in hushed tones, that Maya came to her. Her daughter, though quiet and reserved, had been watching everything closely, absorbing the weight of what was happening. Emery didn't want to burden her, but Maya had already sensed the gravity of the situation. And in that moment, Emery realized just how much her daughter had grown. "Mama," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know what they're doing. I have something that can help." Emery's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Maya hesitated for a moment, then pulled out her phone and unlocked it. She handed it to Emery with shaking hands. On the screen was a video. Maya had secretly recorded a conversation between Dante and Olivia, one where they discussed their plans to frame Emery, to ruin her in court. "I had to do it, Mom," Maya said, her voice trembling. "I knew it was wrong, but I had to protect you. I had to protect us." Emery felt a rush of emotion, pride, fear, and love all at once. Maya had done what no child should have to do, but in that moment, she had become her hero. Emery's heart twisted as she looked at the video. The weight of the decision hit her like a freight train. Revealing the video could end everything. It could expose Dante and Olivia's lies, but it would also bring more pain to Maya. She had to protect her daughter at all costs. But Emery knew there was no other choice. This was the only way to make sure the truth came to light. "I have to do this for her," Emery whispered to herself, the weight of the decision settling heavily on her chest. She took a deep breath, feeling a fierce resolve building within her. She would play the video in court. There was no turning back now. The next day, the courtroom buzzed with an uneasy energy. Everyone knew that something big was coming. Emery was ready. As the judge called the court to order, Emery stood with Tara by her side. Tara gave her an encouraging nod. Her eyes filled with determination. Emery felt the weight of the moment. This was her chance to change everything. With steady hands, she placed the phone on the table, facing the judge. The courtroom grew silent as the video played, the voice of Maya filling the room. I knew it was wrong, but I had to protect my mom. The silence was deafening. Dante's face drained of color, and Olivia shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Their secret was out. Every word they had carefully crafted, every lie they had told, was now exposed for all to see. Emery stood tall, her heart swelling with pride as she listened to her daughter's voice. Maya had saved them both. The judge looked stunned, his eyes flicking between Dante and Olivia, and then back to Emery. He called for a recess, but it was clear that the damage had already been done. Dante and Olivia were finished. As the courtroom adjourned for the break, Emery sat in her chair, her hands trembling with a mixture of fear and relief. Tara leaned in, her voice soft but fierce. You did it. You turned the tables. But Emery wasn't done yet. The final battle was coming. She knew this wasn't over. Dante's pride wouldn't let him lose so easily. He would fight back, and Emery needed to be ready. But for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was in control. The truth was on her side, and no matter how much Dante tried to manipulate the situation, she would not let him take anything from her again. Cliffhanger. The judge returned to the courtroom, his expression unreadable. He locked eyes with Dante, and Emery's heart skipped a beat. I've seen enough, the judge declared. We will resume after the break. Emery's pulse raced. This could be it. The moment she had fought for. Reflection. Have you ever had to fight for something you loved, even when the odds were against you? What did you do when everything seemed lost? Empathy. When do you choose to fight back and when do you walk away? Could you have done what Emery did? Catharsis. This moment when truth finally prevails isn't just justice. It's freedom. What does freedom look like to you? Invitation. If you've ever faced betrayal, share your story in the comments. I read every one. Let's talk about how we rise after the fall.